Blessings, Book Tube. Welcome to another Tag Tuesday. I like to read, you do too. Let's get ridiculous. Big thank you to Meg Purdue at Books Off the Beaten Path for tagging me to this. Tag originally created by Kevin Knoll at Kevin Knoll Reads. There are 20 prompts, so I'm going to jump right in and do my best to be succinct with at least a few of the answers. So the first question is, what book has been on your shelf the longest? As you know, I have neither shelves nor indeed very many books. I suppose it would be Ben-Hur, since I've not been given permission yet by the PC police, no, by the good people to whom I posed the question whether or not it should be read or indeed canceled. There's also maybe a case to be made for a couple books that are in my mom's shed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. These I was thinking of for a later question about which have been around with me, gone the most places with me, but then I realized they haven't gone anywhere. They've been in that shed. So I guess I've had them since quarantine, although I haven't had them there, at my mom's. But a bunch, there's some really cool ones. There's one that I got on crafting comedy, stand-up comedy. I'd really like to have that one with me. But most of them are really small, probably only 4 or 5 maybe. Old trade paperbacks, dime novels that Laura's Books in Albuquerque by the post office there was putting out in her free box faster than I could read them. So I read a ton over quarantine, probably 20, 40, I don't know how many of them, and discovered a lot of great authors. And anyway, I kept a few back with my mom that were maybe more classic. So that might be the longest. What is my current read, my last read, and the book I'll read next? Well, I just finished reading Oblomov with Cams and those great folks over there at that group read, and the Dreamsongs with that amazing group. That was also amazing. 2 really great group reads. So I've done those, sadly. I'm still doing Aladdin's, 101 Nights. And I think at least one other. And I'm looking forward to doing the Faulkner in August, I think. Go Down Moses, is it? Like to do that one in August, and maybe another August one, I can't remember. I am just about finished with a memoir by Fry, the comedian, his school days. A novel by C.P. Snow. I'm a couple chapters from the end of that one. I'm literally in the last pages of Angle of Repose, so you can look forward to a review on that very shortly. I'm halfway through Dragon Reborn and not enjoying it at all. I read it before bed and it does not keep me up. Also a short story collection, which is very hit or miss. What else am I currently reading? 3 or 4 other books. This is common for me, by the way, to be reading a bunch of things at the same time. Just very different, a nonfiction, usually a literary criticism, something fun, and then something more literary. And this is why I never have those reading slumps I keep hearing about. So I wonder why more people might want to try just having a lot of different books on the go at all times. Therefore, you're finishing some at different times and starting new ones at different times. So you always got that happening, which is, revitalizing. As well as, you're reading something that you're in the mood for. Like, right now I feel like I want to read, my Ethiopian guidebook that I'm reading right now. So got that by my bed because it's a chunker. By my chair. So, I'll read some pages in that. So that's a strategy you might want to try if you get a lot of these reading slumps. Third question is, what book did everyone like but you hated? Hated is too strong. I hate very few books. There were trendy books that I didn't love, like The Alchemist or Celestine Prophecies, things like that. But I think the more important thing to say is Proust and Joyce are not the pinnacle of my literary canon the way it seems to be for a lot of literary people. I find Proust highly discursive, not to say gossipy. Um, and Joyce's experiments, while I enjoy experiments, can get, let's just say, long-winded, even though he mixes them up. I also find the the frame, the conceit of this relationship with the original Ulysses to be quite tortured, to be honest with you. I enjoy the illusions. That's fun. Enjoy some of the language play, but that's the kind of thing that gets old quick as well. I don't really enjoy the sort of the onanistic stuff just for its own sake. I don't know. Humor, yes, but as I say, they're just not the top tip top for me. So that's a way that I'm really heterodox, unconventional, even among the literary elite. I'm not among them, but you know what I mean. All right. Okay, 4 is what book do you keep telling yourself you'll read but probably won't? I'm not going to say that I'm not going to read any book. That's putting that out in the universe. Let's go. If I do, though, if I've got to pick one, because I think it's no fair to dodge these questions, I'll say Mein Kampf. It's an important book. It should be read, studied. I'm sure not with any pleasure. And I've never seemed to be in the mood to pick it up. I suppose the moment would have been when I was doing my European history coursework as history minor undergrad. And I was reading, I think we read actually a biography of Hitler, or was it Stalin? Anyway, that would have been the moment to read that. It would have made a lot of sense in context, and I would have had all the connections. And so, yeah, if I ever get into a World War II phase again, maybe I'll read it. Okay, 5 says that what books are you saving for retirement? Um, so, now that I think about it, uh, Kevin Knoll seems to have some interesting weirdness interpreting this one. So maybe he's not the initiator of this tag. Sorry, but I know he tagged Mag, so you can track it back maybe from there. Um, so I would say for retirement, I of course like to keep reading the Nobels. I'm actually a couple behind now. For as long as I can read, I'll try to keep up with the Nobels. I just find that I like them way better than the Booker prizes. And new languages. Every time I'm learning a new language, I try to read, not in that language, well, I try to read it in that language, but I at least I'm trying to read a lot of, or indeed if I'm living somewhere like Honduras, I'll try to read a lot of Honduran literature that never gets read, even by Spanish people who study Spanish. So I'm hoping that I'll still continue to be in new places, learning new languages, and thus wanting to discover new literatures till my dying day. So yeah, that'll be retirement plan. 6, last page. Read it first or wait till the end. I'll save the best for the last, I think, right? What else did I say about this? Oh yes, yeah, I would save the last for last. But I never hold out. I never make it to the end with the bonus materials. There's something to be said for reading them ahead of time, something to be said for reading them afterwards. Some, of course, are put before the text and after the text, indicating what, the intended time to read those. But what I find is I'll start getting into some good literature, and it'll just start the ideas popping, and I'll be already super curious to check out what other people are thinking and saying about that. And it'll cause me to go to look in the index and look in the, bibliography and look in the, intros and everything, including acknowledgments, which might be the next one. Acknowledgements, waste of paper or ink, or interesting aside. Acknowledgements are also very interesting um, for insider information. So if you're a writer, read acknowledgments because you'll see, their editors, their agents, um, in certain cases, places that they have published that you might not have known about otherwise. Um, and yeah, those probably, I usually read them up front because they're not that important, but probably should read afterwards because it kind of gives you sometimes a sense of the author, um, a tiny glimpse of them. But I don't want to be too much in the author's head. I want to discover the author's work through the work primarily. So that is one thing I'll say about my approach to pre-reading. Um, Wonder how pre-reading is being taught in the high school English classes these days, if it's being taught at all, if reading is even being taught at all. 8. Which book character would you switch places with? Well, I thought of this in two ways. One would be as me, but in the setting of the book. The other would be as the character themselves in the book. So as the character themselves, I immediately thought it was got to be a love story where I'm getting all the love. And for the setting, oddly, I found myself going to uh, the Tao of Pooh, the woods, the 100 Acre Woods, is it? To Childland. So Hobbes from Calvin and Hobbes, very chill dude. Even I don't wish to live in that corporate environment, but Wally from Dilbert is a bit of a hero of mine. He's the king of doing nothing. um, but in terms of if I were that character, Ram. I thought it would be a straight up love story, and of course, Ram and Sita is. But see, the love that Ram gets is so much more than romantic love, right? Because he does have his trials and tribulations. This is the exile into the woods and all of that. But think of what happens. For example, he's sent into the woods. So his brother takes the throne. What does his brother do? His brother says he takes Ram's shoes and puts them on the throne and says, "This is Ram's place." What kind of brotherly love is that? At one point, Hanuman, one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and he's helping out Ram, or I don't know why someone's asking him like why, or I can't remember, but or maybe something along the lines of you're so ungovernable. How is it that you're so focused in helping this guy out? Probably something like that, right? And he rips open his chest and he shows on his heart where it is written Ram. So I mean, Sita, going through the trial of fire and all that for the love of Ram is just the icing on the cake there. So love to be loved like Ram. And you may not know this, but people's last words are quite interesting, aren't they? Although many of them are, damn, if they fell off a cliff. Probably be the case with me, but not the cliff, but some dumb accident and some stupid last words. But talk about unexpected. Gandhi, when he was shot, do you know what his last words were? Ram, Ram, Ram. He was calling on the name of God in his last moments. That's beautiful. I hope to emulate that. Okay, where are we? Number 9 says, do you have a book that reminds you of something specific in your life, a place, person, or time? Many. So all the different books that I read from school, so those would represent those times. The books that I read in Peace Corps, for example, very much represent that time. Um, but what I ended up thinking of was books on tape, though, because of those I've read very few. So, for instance, listened to very few. I remember in our wonderful mill house down on Freak Street in the cul-de-sac there in Columbia, South Carolina, with my great roommate Michael Berg. I was listening to Ragtime from the library, and I knew that I was in a horrible, bout of depression because I had met my soon-to-be wife, such an amazing woman. I had great friends, a great job and studies. The social work program, I was interpreting Spanish for the Department of Health and whatnot for the state of South Carolina. And doing good works, volunteering with the Bantu refugees. But there I was, just plastered on this couch. And that's all I could do was sit on this couch and listen to this books on tape for went on and on and on. Another is Bly. He has one called News of the Universe, where he he reads all the different poets that are bringing something more. He's making an argument against the human-centered poetry of like Pope and those guys, and saying there is something more. And I would listen to that underneath the Saharan sky, and you've never seen stars. I mean, maybe you've been on a boat in the middle of the ocean or something, but you go into the Sahara, there are so many stars. It's insane. And I slept on them every night, and I would listen to these poems. So yeah, books on tape can be like really fun, immersive that way. Okay. Name a book that I acquired in an interesting way. Yes, this is a crazy story. So I've had synchronicity in my life, let's say, coincidences, very often around books, and very often in Africa too, where sort of everything seemed possible. And I was reading Murder in the Cathedral on the bus, and I was thinking about these couple incidents that I had had. One, I sort of had a dream that that happened, and another was one of these bookish things. And I was thinking, what's the meaning of all this? What's going on? Is there meaning? And why does it work through books for me? Well, of course, that would make sense that for me it would be through books. And I arrived at the Stage House in Ségou, so in the old colonial capital, beautiful city on the Bani River, Niger River. And we have these share houses that the Peace Corps volunteers would stay at when they were in various towns. And I crashed there. And, I finished the book, so I was going to put it in the shelf to, for someone else to read. And what do I see in this shelf? Not just any, other copy of this book. No, someone had made a diorama, I kid you not, of Murder in the Cathedral in this bookshelf. And I mean, it's not as crazy as it sounds, we're only 100 so volunteers, and we probably only had about, 1,000 or so books circulating among us. So it's not improbable that a couple of us would have read some of the same books at the very same times. But that just, in the context of what I had been thinking about, it just freaked me out. Blew my mind. That was crazy. I'll never forget that diorama. Okay, who makes dioramas? Only Peace Corps. Crazy people. All right, 11. Have you ever given a book away for a special reason to a special person? Yes, the one that came to mind was, so I bought a book of photography, one of those kind of, how you have the art books, it'd be like the 100 great paintings or something like that. This was 100 great photos. My mom who's an artist, had recently begun making these art collages. So I had cut and pasted and made everything real nice and made a page for her with her photo collage and inserted it in the alphabetical order in the book. And my mother's hard to give gifts to. If you find the perfect thing for her, she will hate it. So not surprisingly, she puts this book away, doesn't even look at it for, I think, a couple years. One day she looks in this book, and there she finds this page about her. It's way later, so it made it even more special, and she was very touched. And I was like, yeah, you're famous, you're amazing. So that was cool. 12. Which book has been with you most places? Oh, yeah. So like I said, that the books in the shed haven't been many places with me. Neither have my Dungeons and Dragons books. But since I don't keep many books, through many moves. I think they made it through a few more than usual. They made it from high school to college with me. Um, I wouldn't probably have taken them to, I'm sure, to study abroad in Paris or my work in summer jobs in Holland. Um, but I know that I had them both in Kumbaya Co-op, the commune I stayed in Chicago, and as well as then when I started grad school at Rice in Houston. I still had them because I remember I sold them at a con in Houston before I was going off to Africa for Peace Corps. So those D&D books probably went the most places with me. D&D, by the way, is Dungeons and Dragons, and I had the original. I wish I'd kept them. The original Dungeon Master's Guide, the original Monster Manual. I had the Deities and Demigods. It was great. All right, let's see. You could probably buy them now, but they're probably $1,000 or something. 13 says, any required reading you hated in high school that wasn't so bad 2 years later? Try to be a little quicker here. We're in the home stretch. Yes, I didn't love The Old Man of the Sea, but I had a sense that I might like Hemmingway. And so when I finally got back to him a few years later, I found that I very much did. And that was Farewell to Arms. But I have since read much, if not most of his work, and he is very hit or miss for me. So there are things that I do really like, but then other things that he writes that I don't care for very much. So, yeah. Old Man of the Sea is just a bit long for a fish story. Sorry. Unless you really love fishing. Or the Christ imagery that's apparently in there. Okay. Quickly. Used or brand new? Used, all the way. 15. Have I ever read a Dan Brown book? Absolutely I have. Page Turners. Not bad. Enjoyed it. In fact, enjoyed the whatchamacallit enough that I read the prequel or sequel, which I can't remember what it was called. The Davinci Code, and then one of the others, I think. At least one of the others. 16. Have I ever seen a movie I liked better than the book? No, but maybe. But this leads me to an exciting announcement of my upcoming new series. I'm going to be wrapping up the pastiche series of reviews that I've been doing. I probably have about another 20 or so to do. And when those are starting to end, I'm going to start ramping up into my new series. It's going to be called Reading the Criterion Collection, in which I take great books that have been interpreted by directors whose films have been accepted into the Criterion Collection, which is like the best of film. And I'm going to be using the 3 Reasons format that they have. They put out these, and those you can find on YouTube. They put out these shorts, like 3 reasons, why you should watch, whichever Seven Samurai or, Persona or whichever Criterion movie. So look for those. There's, for example, The Lower Depths, which was interpreted by one of the French romantic directors and also by Akira Kurosawa. So that one might be one. There's got double the chance to be as good or better than the book. So I'll be putting those out soon. I think people will enjoy it. I think they'll be popular. 17. Have I ever read books that made me hungry? Yes, everything I read in Peace Corps made me hungry. In Mali, we eat twice a day. We eat in mid-morning and we eat at sunset. We eat staple, which is called toe, which is very appetizing. A millet paste, more of kind of a dough, which is eaten with a hand. And it is not bad. It's green. But that it's quite good apparently for protein and some other things. So that's your staple. And then, unfortunately, whereas many places in Africa, you have a choice of sauces, a fish sauce, peanut sauce, tigadigana, things like that. We in Mali almost always didn't, unless it was a special occasion. We only had what the volunteers used to call snot sauce, which is kind of like a gumbo of baobab leaves. So it's a very viscous green sauce, but it's quite tasty, tart. And so you dip the dough in the sauce and you eat that twice a day, every day. So you can imagine everything I read made me hungry. um, but it was great. Yeah, the books that I had for Peace Corps, I had a star book, I had a yoga book, I had a meditation book, I had a journaling book, I had that poetry book. I just like it was. I was nourished by books. Um, what else? 18. Who's the person whose book advice you'll always take? Um, Difficult. I haven't received tons of book advice through my life, unless you count professors. I remember my first ever therapist recommended to some men's books to me, like Iron John, Fire in the Belly, that kind of stuff. Robert Bly again. Um, and then my buddy Angus was one of the more brilliant men I've ever known. Now, very unique fellow, so I wouldn't always be interested in the books that he would be interested in, but you would always be able to have an amazing discussion with him about anything you read that he had read, and he had read everything. This is the guy literally reading Chomsky when he's 10 years old, right? This kind of guy. So, and then in my PhD program, I also met intellects sort of on that level. Like there was one in the architecture program I remember, and he was in the architecture program. It was more well read than me in my own in French lit, and just whatever uh, field you brought up, he was so well read in it. It was insane. Some of these people. Um, so I would take advice from them. Then French people. So I got to Paris and I found out that French university students, very well read. For one thing, they have their curriculum, national curriculum, which means they've all read tons of amazing books and they know the same books. So there's this great sort of basis for conversation. So yeah, I hadn't read most of those at the time, and so that was fabulous. And I also remember my friend Stefan, the one who gave me in the airport in Paris on my way to Africa, gave me the Khalil Gibran's Prophet, also Omar Khayyam and a bunch of others. He was amazing. I remember he had a room. It was barely big enough for a mattress. You had no bathroom, just the sink and toilet on the stairs. Had to go to the pool to take a shower, which is, by the way, why French people are sometimes like that, or at least Parisians. It's super expensive, the rent. And his room was just like an arch of books. Just he was literally surrounded by books. Yeah, that guy, on top of all that amazing French reading that everyone's done, he read everything. And voracious. And philosophy. He was a philosopher. And oh my gosh, he knew so much. And he couldn't, not only could he not pass the exam to be a professor, then to be a high school teacher, middle school teacher, he kept going down. It's just like, how smart are these French people? It's crazy. All right, and home stretch here, guys. Is there a book out of my comfort zone that I ended up loving? And then 20 is just tagging people. So this is really the last question. Well, this was a difficult one because, first of all, my comfort zone is huge. like I read almost everything. Don't like true crime or horror. But other than that, however, I will say that I read, one of the funny things about the French too is that was 90s, early 90s. They already loved bande dessinée. They were already lovers of graphic novels. All the Japanese stuff, bunch of French stuff, the Belgians, obviously. And some adult themed ones, like the history of O. Um, Slightly titillating, whatever, not shocking to me. I like to think I'm pretty wide open-minded as a hippie, but of course, what the kids are up to nowadays, they're kinks. I mean, they probably think I'm vanilla. But anyway, so I read the Bataille's Story of the Eye, and it didn't shock me, much less did I think it was written for the purpose of being shocking. I think the author, Georges Bataille, felt that these were shocking topics, but not shocking to him, in my opinion. but I also don't think it was a gimmick. And I don't think it was even, it's kind of an unerotic book in my mind. I think it was really to get the symbols across. That was the format that he wanted, was this sort of pornography. So it's full of, girls dipping their nether parts in, dog bowls of milk, putting eggs in themselves, and just all these really bizarre, acts, sort of pregnant with meaning, but ultimately very sterile. I think that was one of the things that I took away from it. I remember there's a whole Freudian analysis of the excrement, which he equates with gold, and certainly the social strata stuff, class analysis stuff in the book is huge with the servants and all that. That is in there for sure. That's important. So I wrote my last ever paper for grad school at Rice, was Georges Bataille, Eat, Shit, and Die. But there was a justification for the title. Okay, and then just other weird things like with mechanics, like a masturbatory bicycle scene where, of course, he has an accident and he's sort of mangled with the parts of the bike and the parts of the body. So interesting stuff. Not for me. Let's just say not for me. And I know there's a lot of literature that's around these days, it sounds like, that's similarly scatological or shocking. And I just don't feel compelled to read it unless it's going to be really, really philosophically interesting, which Georges Bataille wasn't quite enough. So that was out of my comfort zone, but I enjoyed analyzing it, if that makes sense. Like, had I read it outside the context of having a course, classmates to discuss it with in, a French PhD program, I probably would not have enjoyed just reading that on my own and being stuck with these bizarre thoughts in my mind. Like, I didn't like Portnoy's complaint. Philip Roth, sorry. So there you go, folks. Those are the prompts for this longish tag, but I think a pretty interesting one. Some of the questions I quite enjoyed. So I am going to tag people with this one, but only a few, I think, not one of my long lists. So I want to think carefully about who I do tag. And but if you wish to do this, please consider yourself tagged. And I invite you with Rumi to sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment.